many times, I've been asked, I've been asked so many times, why do you bike commute? Aren't you afraid you're going to die? Well, okay, so I go, why do you cross the street? Aren't you afraid you're going to die? And they say, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, you got a 50-50 chance of dying if you cross the street, right? They're like, no. I'm like, well, you either do or you don't. So walking across the street's flipping a coin. And I can see like they start shaking their head. They're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't make any sense, does it? That doesn't make any sense. If crossing a street was a 50-50 proposition, there wouldn't be any streets. We'd be too afraid to leave our house, right? So what's the problem with saying it's 50-50, crossing a street?
Well, every 2 times you do it, you're going to get hit.
That's what 50-50 says. There are only 2 outcomes, correct? There are only 2 outcomes. You're either going to get hit or you're not going to get hit. You're either going to die or you're not going to die. But that doesn't mean that they're just as likely as each other. The not dying is much, much more likely than the dying, which is why we have crosswalks and wonderful things like this, the law in Oregon that says cars have to stop. Well, should stop for you when you're in a crosswalk. But the interesting thing is that the same question comes back to me. Well, you ride your bike every single day. As you just learned in the last project, the more you ride your bike, you increase the chance of being hit at least once, right? Every time I get on the bike, there's a chance of me being hit. And the more times I go on my bike and put myself out in traffic, the greater the chance that I'm going to get hit at least once. Think about it this way. Remember, the more seeds you plant, the higher your overall chance that at least one will germinate. But also, I didn't have to calculate this, but the chance of at least one not germinating goes up too. It's just the chance of all of them not germinating goes to 0. Does that make sense? Okay, let that wash over you for a little bit. So my point is, I will ask them a question like, well, how likely do you think it is that I'm going to get hit by a car? I put that number out there. So you guys approximate for me. How likely do you think? Give me a percentage. How often do you think I'm going to get hit by a car? Make up a number that you think. 0.0001. 0.0, 1 in 10,000. I like that. I like that estimate. 1 in 10,000. So for every 10,000 trips I take, I'm going to get hit by a car one time in 10,000. I love that. That's good. That was actually lower than it was in Delaware. I used to get hit once a month in Delaware. So that's one of the
better
I
aim.
moved. Better aim?
Than Maine?
Better than Maine. I have no idea. Maybe they just shoot you.
What's the name? Stephen King guy.
Oh, that's right. But that was kind of a random, rare event. So 1 in 10,000. Other numbers? 1 in 25,000. 25,000. 25,000. Good, good. Who thinks it's a little bit higher than that? A little bit higher? Good. A little bit lower? Maybe lower than 1 in 25,000? So I've been on the bike, I'm going to guess, I've been here 10 years now. Ridden to work every single day in those 10 years. So what's that? That's about 1,000 trials right there. But that's just riding to work. That doesn't take in the ride to go get groceries and the ride just for ride's sake. And so I'm going to double that and make it 1 in 2,000. So right now I'm at 1 in 2,000 not getting hit. I've had a few altercations with drivers where they almost hit me, but because I kind of ride defensively, I can fend it off. And that brings up an interesting point. That could have been a hit, right?
But yeah, you changed the probability.
Say that again, Carol.
You changed the probability.
That's why you got to be careful when somebody tells you odds. Remember Han Solo in Star Wars? Never tell me the odds! It's essentially that. It's essentially that. Just because the odds are out there, and I'm not saying they're not important because they are important, but they might not apply directly to you if you can change them. I've shared the story about my friend Jim and his wedding ring, right, with you? No? Okay, so here's a great one, and it's interesting because it just happened with other people. I want to say 5 years ago, Jim, if you're watching, email me to tell me if this is right or wrong. About 5 years ago, my friend Jim, taking 243 with me. It was one of those goofy fall terms where we get those goofy snowstorms, 8 inches of snow falls in like an hour while you're sitting at OSU Cascade. You go in for your class, and it's 85 degrees and sunny, and you come out, there's 8 inches of snow on the ground. Welcome to Bend. So he comes out, not expecting 8 inches of snow, and he's like, oh, crap, I gotta go home to Redmond. So he comes out and puts his books in the back of the car, opens up his front door, turns it on, gets the heater going, and without even thinking about it, starts going like this to clear off his car. It's clearing all the snow off his windshield. Gets back in the car, and everything's going, the heater's going. Starts driving to Redmond, he gets about 3/4 of the way home, he starts to turn to his driveway. He looks down at his hand, his wedding ring's gone. Because what happened was, as he's doing this, it flew right off his hand. And I guess his finger shrunk down just enough. It shrunk it. It shot right off his hand. He calls me, he's like, dude, I don't know what to do, I lost my wedding ring. I'm like, dude, it's cool. I'll borrow a metal detector, and we'll go out and we'll go out and try to find the damn thing. Because once I realized the scope of where I'm like, do you remember where you were parked? He's like, yes. It's like, do you remember what direction you were facing? He's like, no. I'm like, How pissed were you when you were cleaning the car? I was like, pretty pissed. So I'm thinking the trajectory of that rain could be anywhere. So I called my buddy Wade down in IT, who's got a metal detector. I'm like, cool, let me borrow it. I'm like, I'm feeling pretty slick. I'm feeling like MacGyver. Fire the thing up. Like that, like a weed whacker. I didn't turn it on. And I'm like, we're gonna find this in like 5 minutes. And I put it down, and he goes, grrr. I'm like, ah, check that out. We found it already. And I go down there and look at it. I'm like, there's nothing there. That's weird. So I go, grrr, and it registers again. I'm like, what the hell? And I go down. Just so you know, the dirt in Central Oregon is magnetic. So you know, it's full of iron. If you ever notice this, drop a magnet in the dirt here in the summer, pick it up. The dirt's stuck to it because there's a high iron concentration. It's very, very interesting and frustrating in the gym. So I realized the metal detector's off. So, you know what we started doing? What do we start doing? We just simply started progressively starting where his car was and working our way out. And it was tough because there was still snow on the ground and it hadn't melted away yet. And to make matters worse, I think it snowed a second time because they plowed at some point while we were looking. Now we looked for weeks. Every day we'd go out, we could tell who had been there first if there were footprints around it. You could tell because we walked like this. Anybody ever take an avalanche survival class for backcountry skiing? They train you, at least with the old beacons, they train you to kind of keep taking 90-degree turns until you've covered all the area. We did the exact same thing with the first ring. And at some point they plowed, moved all the snow around, went back to the beginning and started again. About 3.5, 4 weeks later, I get an email from Jim. Found the ring. Because we just kept at it. When we told people he had lost his ring, people were like, you're never going to find that thing. You are never going to find that thing. You're never going to find that thing. People kept telling me. And then I started asking my 243 class, what do you think the likelihood is we're going to find it? And what do you think some of the numbers I got were? Well, besides 0. 1 in 10,000. 1 in 100,000. Tiny little numbers. We changed the odds by being persistent. We changed the odds. So you can calculate mathematical averages all you want. The reason I bring this up is you're learning great tools in this class. But don't become slaves to them once you apply them into the real world. If somebody tells you something like, you got 12% chance of, well, you're going to see this later on. The in-class quiz, I collected my data for my own mortality in the state of Oregon over the next year. There's a 12% chance for my age group in the state of Oregon that I will become disabled and unable to work. That's 1 in 8. 12%, that's ridiculous. 1 in 8. It scared the piss out of me until I realized, wait, time out. All that means is, in the sample that they've gotten of people in my age group, 1 in 8 have become disabled and unable to work. What other variables are in there that they're not measuring for? Exactly. That's why I was like, oh! So, please, Michelle.
So, you said that you changed the odds.
Essentially, we made it 100% by working hard enough.
So you concentrated your efforts. So, is there like a time thing in there where if there's a lot of time between it, the odds increase?
We ignored that. First of all, yes. Use your last project's tools on this. We kept going out. Every single time we go out, we increase the odds that on at least one of those trials we're going to find it. You can treat them roughly as independent. The damn plow ruined that a little bit for us.
So your frequency made the odds better?
Exactly, because the chance of us failing every single time shrinks exponentially. Does that make sense? It's the same thing as planting more pumpkin seeds. Every time we went out and looked, we planted a pumpkin seed. Because odds are going to tell us if you plant enough pumpkin seeds, one's got to come up with a certain likelihood. It's going to become 99.9999, however many nines you need percent eventually.
And it's never going to reach.
It can't reach 100, but we can get as close as we want to 100. We can get it within a half a percentage point, within 1. 20th, 1/200th,
right?
because it's exponential. And slightly additive, mostly exponential. Yes, good Lauren. Please, Val.
I don't understand why probability matters once something happens.
Good! That's a very Bayesian question, my
Like,
friend.
once it happens, why do we care how likely it was?
Did you hear that question? It's a fantastic question. Once it happens, and this is funny because this often gets asked to me. Somebody says, like I'll be down in Mazama at Total Fit or something, and somebody will say, oh my God, you know, this guy's got the same birthday as this guy and this guy. What are the odds? I'm like, 100%, you just saw it. It's a cop-out. It's a cop-out answer. So the question is, which way are you looking? Are you looking back or are you looking forward? I tend to look forward because I want to see what I can use to predict with those outcomes next. Fair? I love what you're saying. It happened. It's done. It's water under the bridge. Let's go for a mountain bike ride. But if you want to then use that, if you're Vegas and you want to make sure that you're paying out the right amount of money to keep some money coming in, you got to be able to move it forward. Or if you're a life insurance company. Or if you're trying to figure out, should you go for the high deductible health plan or should you go for the Cadillac plan with your employer? The Cadillac plan, you pay more per month, High deductible health plan, you pay less per month, but if you gotta use the doctor, you're gonna pay more out of pocket. All these ifs are probabilities, yes? So look forward, a fantastic question. It's all about whether or not you're looking forward or looking backwards. And I want to look forwards predominantly, because backwards, you're right, it's one and done. It happened. You either roll a 6 or you don't, 50-50. Well, not if you're looking forward. If you're looking forward, it's 1 and 6, because there's 6 outcomes. Fantastic question. Thank you, Val. We got some data? Let's collect